Ooh, progress in recording. All right. Well, let's get ourselves on a bolster. And I think I'll kind of turn my bolster a little so you can see some of these patterns, but you're going to place you'll need a belt to have on your bolster. And I want you to bring the blocks first under the legs, and they're going to be at the low to the mid setting. And you want to find that I'm going mid setting. It just seems a little bit more casual for my circulation, but in some sense, you want to feel like your hips are really rooted right now and your thighs are comfortable. So there's not like a bunch of gripping in your pelvis to hold this shape. When we add the sand across the feet, I want you to get the sand so it's going to be on the bones of the ankle that thread into the leg. So I have it pretty high on the ankle thread. That's kind of a good way to put it, the ankle threads. And towards the legs, as you're working with being embodied, you'll find some of these location markers are good for kind of finding your line, finding the roots. And I'm starting this way as we are recognizing in this upright shape to establish our root base, our pelvic base is a center of gravity. So what I want you to get is your belt, and when you're seated, kind of prim and proper engagement with this midsection, the belt helps us rise a little bit. So when I get the belt and place it, I want to be careful that it's a little forward versus trying to thrust the ribs forward and move the belt back. So I want you to hold on to it in a comfortable width so it's easy going for your shoulders. And the easier, probably the better for this one. So I don't want it too wide that I can't quite lift up my arms. They kind of drop. I have it wide enough that when I lift up the arms, I have the ability to motion my spine and give it some hope to lift versus collapse. And that support of the spine by the awareness of the breath internally. Whether the breath has any ascension or not, I'm not sure that that is really true, right, with this shape, because the diaphragm's going to move like it moves. It's not going to change because you put some props on, right? So that's just a design we're thinking maybe. But when I hold onto the belt, I'm going to lower it forward so it's much easier in my shoulders. I hope it is for you too. And then when you inhale, you're going to work on moving your ribs and leaning forward, and the arms go up, maybe a little bit more straight up towards the ceiling. And close your eyes and rest them so that your concentration is on this effort of the reach of the arms. Okay, feel the circulation that is kind of bound in the legs. It's called bound angle for a reason, or bound ankle. In some way, it's a bound angle. And then as you lower your belt down in front, lower it down, you're going to place that aside, keep it nearby, and then move your blocks away and take the sand and lift it up to that left leg. And I want you to lower the left knee down so the sand is on the top of the left thigh. And then you'll cross the right leg up and over the left knee. If this doesn't work for your knee, it just feels completely out of comfort zone, then you can put a block in front of your path and put your foot on top of that knee open. So those are two options. But as you cross that right leg over to the left, across the thigh, feel the ribs spatially. And I want you to let the arms lift. You don't have anything to hold on to. And you're going to tilt your body over towards the right. I think of this as rib tilt. We generally do this with belts, but we're going to do this kind of freestyle. And then as you come up, so you just kind of were tilting, like tilting your teapot over. And then when you come back up, hold the left knee or the right knee with the left hand and twist to your right and reach that right hand back for if there's a blanket that you can touch down to, but use that touch so that you have a little reservation where you're touching down, but you're not collapsing into your shoulders, the upper right side of your back. So consider as the eyes kind of let the slant of the eyes lowers down, kind of like you're shutting the blinds, and feel that concentration of holding onto the right knee and or putting the left arm on the outside of that right leg and pushing to reinforce the rotation. So you're kind of squeezing in your mid-body. Now lengthen on the in-breath and turning on the out-breath. Unwind back forward. And now we'll take that right leg out, but we're going to do something a little different with this right leg pattern. So when the right leg is open, you're going to lean over to that right side and you're going to let your spine lower down in towards the leg. So I take the blocks over to the right and I lean down, and it is a little bit of a different sensation in the spine. It's like you're pulling out of this left side of the waistband and you're letting the spine have more rounding than deep arching. So feeling that it's a forward bend, but you're going towards the right. Feel where the waist lowers down and noticing the right foot flexing. In breath, let the rib cage gently motion back. So you create a little more rounding with that, a little more of a cat spine. And then maybe you go a little bit further down with that connection to the forward bend. Okay, so I want you to get just a feel of this position. And then we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to turn so that the right leg is going to move straight in front of you. And you might have to kindly move the left knee a little open so that the left foot is not getting squished by the right leg. But the right leg is straight forward, and we're going to lean down. And I want you to really work on the flexing of that right foot. So you're trying to work on your own motor skills of your leg. Usually you use a belt to get this to operate the way I'm hoping for, but feel if you can get the ankle and the flesh of the bones of the leg to move and toes moving back. Seems like a simple act of motor skill of the leg, but a little challenge sometimes to keep that wake in the leg. Okay, so we're going to play a little with balance. So you're going to come up, feeling from that spine and that circulation in the spine, and then take a belt. And we're going to place it forward beneath that right foot. So you might need to bend your knee to get your belt under your foot and then kick up that right leg. In fact, you might kind of work with energy of kicking. So it's like you're moving out of your core to kick the leg up, and play with the pull of the hands on the belt. So they're both equally, well, we hope, equally serving this pose to extend through that right leg and keep the quadricep strong. So as if you're tightening the top of the right leg. Give it a few moments. And if the spine is moving forward, this is one where you want to keep a little muscle memory about. We're going to do some standing poses today, and this is going to be something we reflect on. So keep that muscle memory of the right leg straight. So it's pretty feeling like it's sharp, it's reaching. Okay. And then feel if you can get the leg to lower, and we'll lift it up one more time, but this time I'm going to give myself a little more slack on the belt. So I do feel my hip flexor kind of peak a little bit, like actually be upset a little bit. It's feeling like it's getting some pull. So I'm going to reach through that right foot like you're pointing your toe or your toes, not just one toe. I guess it's all of them a little pointy. Feels like it's a big turning point, but, And when you have the toes in that position forward versus flexing, you're gonna try to lift up that right leg again, like up, but the foot is trying to point, okay? And now as you go from pointy kind of direction to flexy, pointy to flexy, okay, make sure that the belt is being held pretty vigorously to pull and to lift the flesh of the back of that right leg. And then bend through the knee completely. And as you shift, what you'll do with that leg is change. So you'll bend the right knee, lower that thigh down, take the sand over to that leg that was just worked out, and cross the left leg over to the right, over the right leg. Now, when you balance your hip frame, these are fairly complex patterns. So we're starting with, they're fundamentals, and the word fun is in them. So maybe we're having somewhere in the back of your consciousness, this is somewhat fun. So we have the lift of the rib space, and feel when you turn the ribs side to side, when you kind of play with movement, like you're twisting. And then move left and bring the right elbow or the hand to that left leg and push to wring out the torso. It's like you're certainly squeezing and wringing it out in the mid body with that left hand moving behind you. Good. And get the feel of the coordination of muscle. And where does the flexibility come in on this position? It's kind of an interesting one. It's about the spine flexibility, but it's not necessarily acknowledged in a twist when you're in it. So you'll work with the flexibility of your lungs and of the spine. And then finding if the neck is completely engaged, which means gripping, if that's happening, you might let your head turn a little forward, maybe tilt your ear to your shoulder a little bit, and then balance from the root, breathe, unwind, and reach the left leg out, open through that leg, and then balance your weight. Maybe you have to reorient on your bolster. We're going to balance our weight and take our blocks over to the left side. So you're leaning, making that C shape of a spine. Now, these are really ones where you probably want to do your own kind of spontaneous patterns of moving your back, maybe a little cat-cow. Maybe you kind of lurk in the shape and just practice some curiosity with movement, maybe letting your head shift a little forward, or a little bit of the arch. Just kind of play with that. But feel now with that leg reaching. Okay, and then we're going to slide the blocks forward, and that way I'm going to slide my left leg forward as well. So it's a tad bit unusual than we've ever done. The right foot is on the inside of that left leg, ish. It's not really touching my left leg, but it's right next to it. And then as we lean forward, we let the spine kind of massage through the muscles on the sides of the spine and feel the breath moving through. So it might have an experience of kind of the cycle of rounding and flexing, but give yourself opportunity to take the blocks forward. If you prefer to use a belt, right, to use the belt under your left foot and pull anytime. We're going to add that eventually, but it's up to you. This I find interesting to use the blocks because it's a wider span in my back muscles. So I can kind of concentrate on that breath in my ribs when I'm going into this stretch of my back body. They both need to be moved through. Now, if you can get your belt and reach it under that left foot and then hold the belt, sit upright, or not uptight, but upright. Hold the belt, give it kind of or whatever reach, like just grasp a hold of it and see what happens when you try to lift up the leg. Do you need to pull further with your elbows bending, or do you prefer to get your hands farther forward on the belt? And then that gives a little greater stretch in your back muscles, the back of your shoulders here. So kind of play with that kick of the leg. I think that for me is the most mysterious piece because I am trying to work on the muscles that I use to kick. It's like these things that you learn when you're really young, how to move out of your back with your foot forward. And so kind of get a feel what muscles combine to react to lifting, and then play with that pointing pattern with the foot. And these are all just different fundamentals that we're sorting through. So let this beginning 5 or so minutes be, we're kind of sorting through the puzzle, and then we'll get it put together. Now, as you let that left foot, the toes move forward, so you feel a difference in your foot, it's also kind of like your spine, right? Some people will compare foot to spine of all kinds of things, you know, as far as our circulation in the body as well. So feel how the connection of the toes moving forward, pointing. Notice how that feels in your back muscles. And then feel when you flex the foot, which is the normal thing we do all the time, it seems, in these practices of posing, right? We do a lot more of this. So feel when you're lifting how you have to pull, and then feel when you're pointing the back of the waistline, the posterior core muscles wake up. That's kind of something to notice here. We'll start ballet in the next 5 minutes, and we'll do some ballet. It's a good core center. So now as we let the foot get a little more kind of in between neutral, we'll bend to that left knee, and we'll lower down and take the belt off now that your fingers can open and close a little bit. Put the belt off to the side, easy to get with your upper body. Uncross, and then we're going to take a block, put it right next to the center of the bolster, so I have a flat block right in front of my middle of my bolster. I'm going to scoot forward and sit on it, and then have both of my blocks so they're easy access. One is under me, so I know where it is. But we'll take it so that the body lowers back. And remember, you can have your blanket behind you straight under the spine versus across. So you could go horizontal with the blankets under your head, or you can go spine wise. And level out your core span here. So let the feet really go wide, and maybe the knees together. How about that? That sounds good. TP pose. So the toes pivot in, and all these toe angles, point, flex, pivot. Feel your feet working and turning in. And then notice where they max out, right? This pivoting pattern might be triggering some sensations in the back. So find what's good for your back muscles to feel that complete arch and that length in the mid body. Okay, good. And then what we'll work our way towards is to reach the chest muscles open, widen the arms, and deciding if you want to lengthen both legs straight down. Okay, so if that works for your system, your structural system, your skeletal system, take on the legs extending, but with the supported bridge pose. It's a complete support, right? As a bridge pose, the only thing that we're really doing is lifting up our mid body and having all this support from the props to sustain this circulation. So with that in mind, add some sand to the upper body or the mid or the upper legs. So get a feel, where would this be useful for you? It could be on the thigh lids, could be at the rib cage, and then feel the feet separating unless you have the knees together like we started with knees touching in feet apart, which is also fine. So with the arms back in that mode of openness, experience your breath, movement through the diaphragm. Even if that's not something you sense on a level of exactly where you can feel that muscle, you know that the movement actually lifts up the abdomen, so it's close to that space. Diaphragm must be in there if that's what's responding, is the belly lifts. And then it relaxes back to the spine. And let the legs be however they can find a composure to be grounded. And let's maintain this shape for several moments. Feel the breath moving at the belly level. If it really gets up to the upper ribs and the chest, because that's naturally where it will flow with your position. I want you to see if you can monitor that strength in the belly level with the breath. So that corresponds with your back muscles and relieving in the back. So a few moments. Now concentration on the shoulders at the back level. Feel the shoulders roll back and down, even when you're on your back, right? So you can still get some movement in the shoulders, maybe like you're shrugging them and rolling them back. Okay, and we're doing this as a preparation for side sage. So what's interesting for me in that shape is that there is some shoulder collection, right, that you have to work with, both sides in different directions they go. So feel when the shoulders go in the same direction right here. And they're back and down. And then we'll start to slide the feet so they're close and they're bending and they're closer towards your seat. And then feel if that throws some of your body weight back into your back muscles, right, when your knees bend. This might be something to notice when the legs are straight. It might message in your mind that, oh, that's going to strain my back. But where the back weight goes when we bend the knees is pressing around our back. So we're going to do what I think would be a real healthy counter pose to this would be a side reaching. So we're going to slide the sand away, but keep it rolling. Actually, if your sand goes, you go too. So you're going to roll to the left, I hope. Unless you went right, then pivot back to your left. I don't think it matters today, actually. We're going to mirror these poses pretty well. So you go whichever side. And the side you've chosen to go down on the bolster with your side body, you're going to approach the pose, approach the bolster. Yeah, you're going to lower down your ribs, so you really are centered onto that, but you might have a ball under the right inner leg, you might opt out. But when you're leaning into the side, think of this shoulder support. So I'm going to put a block overhead, but with my left arm in between my bolster and my blankets, I really slide it through to stretch out my left side of my back. So I want you to try to work on that reach with the arm after maybe your head is on a blanket so you can settle. The blanket might need to get rolled up a little higher. You want to find that you are indeed able to relax your neck, right? So if that ain't coming to fruition, you might find I figured out a way to get my blanket so it's folded a little bit higher, but it's also sloped down by my left side of my neck. So it's kind of like, it's comfortable little crevasse. So you kind of play with getting your prop set up. Okay, now the sand is on the side for some of us, perhaps placing that on. And then as you reach your right arm overhead, you've got a block for you. Or you let your right arm open or relax on your side. Okay, there's a few ways you can put that right arm. Now, if you open out through the arm and you get a feel of that reach and play with that, maybe instead of a still pose, you're coordinating the movements of getting into it with the right arm, but the left arm stays pretty much still. Once it finds its resting place, it doesn't really twitch very much. Okay, now let the ribs expand with the breath. Come into the shape, whether you've got your eyes open or closed. You might let them relax. And you can still find directions with your eyes closed, right? Being a little more intuitive in your opportunity of moving your arm or coming to a slow and then a stillness. Breathing. Feeling that slow motion of inhale. And out breath. Okay, now with one side down, okay, another to go. Let's do a little contrast compare and feel if this did anything, right? It's nice we have to take time to be in it to find some, the connective tissue to get a little bit more hydrated. It's a little more, fluffed up. But you still might have some of those holding patterns, right? When we try to come to either you can move into, if you prefer, a child's pose. You can do that if you don't want to push into your wrists, or a dog pose. But we all end up kind of on all fours to get to one of those. So when you turn to your side that your left knee or your knee is up on, oops, could be right or left, whichever is the knee closest to the bolster you pivot to. And then you're going to turn, probably facing the back of your mat, I'm assuming. So let's say you don't want to use your bolster. You could just put it aside and come back to child's pose, right? Okay. If you're going to go into dog pose, just leave it. Hands out wide, so you have a stance like you do your knees, and you might have a wide knee stance as well. And then when you lift them up, you're going to stretch your heels towards the ground. And I like the bolster in this position. I find it really interesting for my circulation, but some cannot tolerate that pressure. So get a feeling of your brain down, whichever pose you've chosen, dog pose or child's pose, the brain is down. And the waist tries to reach, right? You might wriggle a little side to side, do some of those hip tilts, bending your knees. That's kind of a fun one to do, is to alternate pedaling through the legs and then get a feel how you shift your weight in your hands and move your hips side to side. So be a little bit playful with it. And as the movement cycles, you're going to lower down to join the hands and knees crowd here, and then get a feel of the fingers open and that rounding of the back. But feel when you round the back, can you help your head and your neck release by that important movement of your back rounding and flexing? So feel the chin move in towards the chest, complete movement through the thyroid. Who would have known you could circulate in there, huh? Well, there's a lot of yoga poses that bring awareness into that space. Okay, and then when you find the arch of the spine, you're going to walk the knees back, and you're going to turn to the other side you were not on for side sage. So this would be side 2, side B. Okay, so arm between, and make sure that you have the space in between, not too much and not too little, so that your precious brain can relax. Okay, so likely you're going to use a ball for some and a sandbag on the outer banks of that hip. And you know, if that sandbag doesn't feel supportive and you want to have the leg continuously kind of reaching without any holds on it, then you might go without the sand. And you can kind of notice if that's an option. It does feel like you can kind of keep it on that ball and slide it a little bit back and forth. It's nice to feel that movement in the pelvis and still experience that range of motion. So that block overhead could be one of a few different heights, huh? Not a bad idea to try it out, especially if going to the high height has just a little bit of challenge in your arm, just a little bit. That's okay, unless it's feeling harmful and painful and sharp, or if it goes numb, that's not good. So feel the range of motion in the ribs. Now come into that rib expansion and settling. Let it alternate. Good. Let the breath create a slow path of awareness, right? Tapping and connecting your midsection with your arm, or I guess your arms themselves, right? Not just the upper arm, but the lower is that base. And that lower arm, you likely could, kind of mildly challenge it, like you're trying to reach it across, kind of a mild challenge for that side of your back. And if it feels like there's a little bit of extra stretch that comes with that, but it's not painful, then you might try it because you're in a nice setting to encourage that length in your neck here. It's like you're getting a little bit of traction in the neck, but it's not uncomfortable. So with a few more moments. And now, with this upper body having all this circulation, let's see what happens when we really shift and let the legs have that elevation now. And that will drain the legs, obviously, but also encourage that stimulation in the upper reservoir of our breathing muscles. So when we start to transition here, I want you to let that block, if you're using one overhead, you're going to slide that. Make sure I'm in the right programming here. What I want to do, slide that over to the side. And then when you roll to that side that your knee is popped up towards, you're going to turn. And why not move the ball if you've got that? And take a little bit of a pivot here. You're going to move your blanket. So when you move onto your back with your legs up, you can either have your blanket, so you have one blanket, or you could have it like this, these two blankets stacked. So The one blanket might make it a little bit more comfortable when we switch through some of the settings that we're coming up to, but you can always just slide one of them out. It's never as big of a deal as maybe I'm thinking it up to be. But when I lower down, I'm gonna get my seat now entirely on my bolster, okay? I'm gonna get my sandbag so I'm already ready to go with it. I won't have to be gripping my shoulder to get it on. And then when I lower back, I'm in the center of my bolster and my sacrum is right on the front center edge of it. So it's almost as if I'm in a squat sitting on the floor, very close. And then I'm gonna lower back so as much of my back is coating that bolster. So when I bring my feet up off the ground, give that a try. Once we kind of all arrive towards this pattern, you've got your opportunity to take your time. There's no rush. And in this moment right now, I feel like I'm a little forward on my bolster, just like it's just a little awkward. Some days it might not be that way, but I'm gonna move it a little bit down so I feel right with it. Like you have to get the right setting of your spine. And then as you lift up your sandbag, bring your knees to your chest, separate the feet just enough that you have plenty of support with the width of your feet, but not too much so the sand doesn't fall off on one side. And then you'll want to get your belly or your clothing or everything kind of set up in the core, kind of the navel center, to feel like that's like a nice platform. It's like supposedly the length of the pose. So you want to find the core body so it's centered, kind of like a lake. It's centered. It's your centered lake. And the feet might be kind of dawdling a little side to side, and a little bit of a shakiness, the kind of twitch. But once you're finalizing the twitching, you'll work on the flexing of the feet and then find a way to root your ankle bones so that they are like, it's like if I close my eyes and sense my ankles, it's like I need to feel both of them to get this pose. I can't just do one leg and a sandbag, I need both of them to make everything circulating properly in my organs in the center, right, my abdominal organs. So I would take it in this pose, if you can manage this with the sand and the legs up and the bolster under, I would add a belt to it if you can around your mid thigh. So you would take your belt and I would make it so you kind of already see the measurement of your buckle to the connector, that it's gonna be enough to go around the legs. Now, of course, you're a little bit challenged with your sand overhead, but see if you can reach it around the legs. And then so I guess if you were gonna do this again, you might prep the belt before you get your sand up, huh? Okay, we learn something every time. Hopefully no one had their sand fall on them there. Okay, so live and learn, huh? All right, so I'm tightening up the belt and I'm doing this for circulation standards, optimal circulation. But also it gives my legs that sense of, like I mentioned, with the heels, feeling them both, feel the structure and the integrity here of the pose. So I'm gonna work on moving my arm span open to cactus. If there's anything that's kind of in your way, to take that balance into consideration, find what you need to get the balance here. The hands are open, maybe they curl in comfort, and feel the ascension of the belly, and maybe that will help the back, right? So notice your breath movements. And if that is helpful for your back muscles. So you might have to soften the approach to your breathing, make it a little gentler. If your eyes are closed, you might be completely shifting, right, in your circulation blend of movement down towards the diaphragm, stimulating the stomach muscles. So it's an advantage if you let the abdomen relax on this pose, right? It's an advantage for the coordination of the diaphragm. So that movement of the abdomen. And it's likely something we'll work with for quite some time, right? Past this class experience and probably many, many classes ahead, that you'll be trying to find that comfortable kind of rhythm, comfortable choreography of breathing when you're inverted. You may think you're already there, but there's always some interesting considerations internally that might help it be even more satisfying. If you're trying to find a way to be in comfort in your body. And some of these postures are enhancing, right, our health, our internal environment. Only a few, maybe all. Okay, so in looking to your knees, are they in this kind of shape where the feet are apart and the knees are kind of in, and then the legs are, so it's this interesting shape that we get into. Some people in observation, they'll easily have their knees apart. They don't seem to jinx that, but in time you might find they just go back towards the place you were trying to keep them away from in the start. So work with the reach of the heels and the flex of the feet again, so the knees might be able to get back apart. And then as you unbuckle, I'm going to have us use this belt in a moment, so just keep it on your lap, on your core, not your lap, it's your belly. And as you bend your knees, you're going to move that sand away. Sand away. Okay. Take the belt under the left foot and lift it up and let the right leg lower and cross the left leg to the right. Keep it in action here. So we're going to keep motion. Okay, bring the left leg back up, but let the right hand stay with the belt, holding on, and then move it across to the right. Okay, we'll do this a few times at your own pace, so you feel the leg kind of resist with the belt. Now, we don't want to make the right arm so charged that it's trying to make a tug of war with the foot in the belt. So it's on a leash, but we're not, being super resistant and trying to keep it in all strength mode. So I want you to get enough flexibility that the leg could easily get back up. Okay. Now, one more time when you cross the left leg to the right, and I want you to let that leg go downstream so it slides. The foot is still on the belt, the right hand is holding the belt just like it was, but you're pushing that left heel downstream, so to that lower right corner in your space. You press into the heel. Now try to avoid wiggling your hips too much on this one so it sets into the hip. Okay, and now as you pull with the right hand, you're going to kind of pull that left leg across. And then bend the knee. And feel that left knee as if it's trying to pull up to your right shoulder. Just get it to move towards the shoulder. I won't say it will or it won't, but let's just keep it in that direction. Okay. And then lift up the left foot and take the right foot now up into the belt, crossing the right leg to the left as your left leg is down. Hold the belt with the left hand. So we're going into these, we'll go into a little quicker this time. So you're going to go straight up and across. Now kind of play with it. The more you analyze this, the more you have questions like, well, am I supposed to be tipping? Or, how secure do I need to make the pelvis on the bolster, right? Can I let it cross and tilt and rock over? So I would encourage you to to really sort out the rolling on the back of the pelvis here, like you're rocking. Yeah, and so instead of it being, prim and proper, it's got to be legs straight up or leg downstream. Play with it, but eventually you're going to let the right arm be open on the floor and hold the belt with that left hand and let the right foot go downstream. So it points down, the right heel points down to the lower left corner. Yeah. And then maintain that sensation. Well, I guess your sensation will change, huh? But you're maintaining that direction. We've been kind of all over the place so far in the class, but this kind of brings us back a little bit to what we were doing in the beginning. We're kind of gonna flow back and forth and to make a story here. Okay, now as that left leg is drawing over to the right leg, sorry, is drawing over to the left, you're gonna reach that right heel towards the left and then bend through the knee and then give yourself a little slack. Come back up and take the left foot up into the belt. Let both feet push out into the belt. I'm kind of beginning to like this one a little bit with the hands both holding onto the belt. Upavista. Now, if you can rig it up, now this just happened to work out for me today with the buckle, but it doesn't seem to ever, except for this moment, where the buckle's not in the middle of where my feet are. And I could slide my feet back and forth and kind of work on my leg muscles, but also my core. Now, if I push the feet on the belt, like I'm trying to push through the ball of the foot, so you get the belt high up on the bottom of the foot, and you're working your core muscles, but my elbows are on the ground. Okay, so play with that for just a few more moments. Feel the resistance with the legs. I know it's not even a TheraBand, but you can still get some resistance with the belt. Okay, now bending the knees and slide the feet together. And then take the belt off and bring your knees up, pointy in towards your chest. And now we'll keep the belt nearby, but as you let your knees draw in, I want you to push your bolster forward. And then we're going to work with this bridge flow at first, where the knees tuck in and you're off the bolster in between the bridge pose. So the bolster for me right now is no longer under my seat, but it's on the floor in front of my feet. I can barely reach it with my fingertips. Okay. So I want you to get a feel when your hands are on the floor and your knees are moving towards your chest. Like, You could opt for those poses where you kind of try to lift up your rear off the ground, but let's not. Let's work on some simple stuff here. So when the knees move away and then the feet lower down, find when you push down into your bolster and then when you lift up your hips. Okay, now, if you feel this kind of rocking back and forth, then you might want to move your blanket back just temporarily for these bridge flows. Now, I don't want you to jostle back and forth in your neck. Some people need the blanket under the neck. It just feels better. If you feel like some tightness in the neck happens when you remove the blanket, then use it. Bring it back. Now, when you lift up your hips and your weight is moved back to your shoulders, can you push down into the feet? Okay, and then let the spine lower down and bring the knees into the chest and hold the legs by the hands reaching around the shins or the back of the legs and squeeze in. Okay, lower the feet back down to the bolster. Inhale, lift the arms overhead, stretch them straight back over, hips lift up. And then exhale, lower the spine. Good. Bring your knees to your chest. How simple it is. So take it again. So feet forward, arms overhead, lift up the hips. Spine down, hands to the knees, bring the legs in towards the chest. So continue this for the sensation of moving through the spine, like you do cat-cow, but you're lifting your hips and then you're lowering the spine. As the vertebral lineup lowers down to the pelvis, lift up the legs. Now this is right where, that moment right before you can see my knees moving, is where I feel a little bit of the back kind of grip. So what I want us to work with now is to bring our feet to the bolster, bring your arms down by your sides, and then have the hands, actually I said by the sides, but have them on the front of the thighs. And then when you push into your thighs now, before you lift up your hips, maybe you already did, but try to keep your pelvis down. There might be a little bit of lift up because of the arch of the back just here, but try not to push into your feet yet. So push into the legs with the hands, then push down to your feet and lift up the hips. So the knees point away from you. That's the fun part of that one. Now it seems so fundamental, right? It's fun. No. Now lower the spine down and be clear that your spine touches all the parts to the ground. Okay. We're taking the fun out of fundamental right now. But as you push into the thighs, we're going to take this 2 more times. I want you to kind of get the roots of it. Lift up the hips and notice what you engage. Go ahead and come up and down. What you engage so that when you lift up the rear, now we might all be different. It might just be me that has this issue, but when you lift up the rear, notice that your shoulders are part of it. This is one reason why this works and doesn't have this kind of hiccup in it when your hands are on the legs, because it keeps the shoulders intact. Okay, so I want you to let your hands lower down and get the belt, slide it under your rear. The belt is just a long belt. It could be unbuckled. That would be perfect. You're going to hold the belt, just let your rear be a little bit up. Hold the belt, palms open towards the ceiling. My belt's basically holding my rear up in some ways. It's going to probably do that. But I'm holding onto the belt, palms open. And then we're going to keep lifting the hips up. Scaled bridge pose, right? Scaling bridge. And you're going to keep that lift until your legs are, they get a little tired from holding you up here. So push down to your feet, lift up the hips, shoulders back. Breathe. And sometimes when you're on your back doing the breath focus, it's the most challenging time to breathe on your back. That is just true. So you got to put the effort in, and it might make you actually sleepier than if you were doing the sitting upright. That would be normal. So do the best to stay alert when you're breathing on the back for class, unless we're in the last pose. And then when you let go of the belt, right, you still have to feel your hips engaged. And then as you lower down, the hips lower, and the spine has to kind of do its flexing, rounding shape to get the back of the pelvis, the sacrum settled. Okay. And then let the feet step out on the bolster, a little bit wider on top of it. And knees are going to swish side to side. Okay. So when we do our crossover today, which I want to keep some things, expected, so you have an experience of practice, right, where it means we repeat. So when the knees swing side to side, get the feel of the rib cage moving too. You can get the knees to swing and also the ribs. Now you might have to put your blanket back under your head if it was moved back, so that you're going to feel a little bit of integration with comfort. And then take that bolster, push it with your foot over to the right side of your mat. And we're going to use that for our leg to cross over on. Now you can play with this one. Of course you can play a lot with these patterns, but you might at first just tilt both knees over to the bolster and kind of see one. Is that good? Well, you likely need one at a time. So you're going to stretch the right leg down and cross the left leg piece and get a feel of the piece, the whole leg, right, that you're crossing. So it's reaching out of the sacrum. Add a ball to the sacrum and maybe a sand to the outer leg. Okay. And get a feel when you have that support. Your sand might be overhead from a little while ago if you can't find it. Add support to the leg part closest to the knee joint and get a feel if you can help that circulation in around the knee this way. So one thing I'm finding is that just as I mature and observe and talk to people that do yoga, don't do yoga, and you know, kind of the assortment of awareness in the hips, hip kind of breakdown issues. And then it comes to the knee or vice versa. It seems to kind of sweat back and forth. But having the hips getting open is going to be helpful, right, for that circulation that steers both directions above the hip to the back or then down to the knee. Because kind of this mid space to support its circulation. It's rare in the daily movement you're going to stretch your hip when you walk, like this type of stretch. So having some specific time is good when you're putting time aside for it. Now, if the leg doesn't feel like it can actually do anything but shake on this pose, then you probably need a blanket under the knee as well as the bolster. So you might add some height. But open the left arm. Let your head roll to the left. And then feel that left shoulder. Maybe it kind of rolls down under, opening the left side of the chest. And just simply experience the slow breath. Okay, take a few more moments. And even though it's mostly your leg that's doing the rotation, there's still plenty going on in the ribs and the upper section. So the left arm. So it's like the seated twist. It's not like a whole lot different with what goes on the coordination of things. It's the leg crosses and the upper body goes the other direction. Same thing. So get that feel of that rotation, that movement through the left side. And now as we start to switch through, I want you to let that left arm slide back in to move the ball and the sand perhaps. And then get a feel here when you move the pieces of the props. You might adjust when you move onto your back into the left foot crossing to the right knee. And you might just let that hold for a moment and let the left knee open and not spend too much energy on pushing around things, but feel how things kind of work on their own hinge, right? Especially the ankle to the knee to the hip. So I'm trying to let my back have whatever's a natural movement, not trying to fix it into a frame, but feel how it naturally moves through. And then as I prepare to go to the other side, I'll move my bolster first to the left and then switch over. So that left knee is out. And then I'm going to stretch the left leg down. Okay, and last time I mentioned that you could bring both knees over. You might play with just knees to your chest, but you can also stretch the left leg down initially and then cross the right leg to the left side. So gain movement. Try to encourage this movement pattern in your low ribs, right? And then it will climb up in the rib section to attach to the arm. But feel when that crossover occurs, and then add your ball, maybe, And then that sandbag on that outer leg. You might start with kind of holding onto the leg to see what height you're going to use. Because once the sand is on, it's harder to kind of move the leg up and down, right? You kind of have it fixed. So if I pull the leg up, that's going to stretch my back more. But if it's achy and it's just too much to have the leg very high, then I'll let it go where it's kind of neutral and then get the sand on. So it holds my leg down, it keeps it so it's has a little more content. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, so get a feel of that crossover position. And breathing, and let it be a slow circulation with the in and the out breath. Feel where the rib chest opens. You know, with the right arm in its span out, some of you might have sand, some may have passed on that idea. This would be a good time to get a feel of the movement of the breath in the ribs, but also via the abdomen moving. Okay, and then we're going to add a little bit of complex patterns here coming right up. So as we move the ball and the sand, you know, do this this pattern. It's always an offering, right? No, nothing has to be something you work exactly like me, of course. But when you come out of this, you'll likely come back to what would be maybe the right foot to the left knee, the right knee swings a little open. And then move the bolster, you know, so it's, you kind of push it a little bit forward from that left side. And then feel where that right knee is out. I know we generally will pull the leg in and get that more intense grip on the hip, but get a feel for how the right thigh moves open, how the balance occurs on the inner thigh chain. And after doing all these kind of reclining, right, these poses that are, you know, very restorative nature, some standing patterns can be quite restorative too when they're supported with the choreography is supportive. Okay, so when you uncross, try to come up today rolling from the back. Now, if you're concerned about that shape, tightening your back, then roll to the side and then lift up. But you're going to either have your knees to your chest and then hands at the back of the legs, and then use that swinging action. Remember, I mentioned early on that kicking action. Well, not kicking, but it is kind of that action in the back when you move the knees forward and up. It's like that stretch in your back to come up to sitting. And then we're going to move our bolster to the very front. Well, it could be anywhere in the front, just far forward. And then slide your blankie in. And let's shift our body weight. So we're rolling over to the knee path underneath your well, they're kind of under your hips. If you look at all the patterns, I'm going to have my blanket in a quarter fold, so it's pretty snug. But when you reach forward with your hands, I want you to take the knees so that they're tucked in today on this first motion. And then let the spine feel it's round, so it's like your chin moves to your chest and your knee to your forehead, so tuck in. And then stretch the right leg back and arch through the spine. Okay, bring that right knee back to the blanket and switch. So the left knee tucks in and the left leg goes back, arching, and then come back center with the knee. So The challenging pattern, even though that would be what I first say what's challenging, but is having this wide stance with the hands. And then we'll repeat it. Knee tucks in, the right knee. Leg stretches back. I find the spine naturally arching. And you could do this on your elbows if your wrists don't prefer this. And then the knee comes back center. Okay, so take it one more time. Knee towards forehead, chin tucks to chest. Leg kicks back. Arch the spine. Now, it doesn't have to be a really fancy arch, just reaching your head forward. And then bring the knee back. And so as the knees widen about hips distance, toes under, lift up the knees to a downward dog and stretch out through the calves and feel the circulation that spans from the sitting bones down through the back of the knees. And I want you to spend most of the energy on what's up with the back of the knee energy. So step the feet a little wider apart and then bending the knees. Inhale, hands are open, either hands on the ground or elbows. And then exhale, stretch the heels back and down. So center your focus here on the arms reach. Breathe. Yeah, we're going to walk the hands back, and we're going to do something a little different with this pattern. So just have it so your hands walk back so there's zero pressure on them, and let your knees bend. So of course they're going to bend, huh? How else are they going to hold you now? So as you bend your knees, let your arms dangle. So there's no wrist pressure at all. And you might nod your head a little side to side. Okay. Now look around for where your blocks are. Kind of notice where are they? They're in the front, side, back near you. I want you to put your blocks over towards the left side of your mat. You might have to do a little bit of crawling here, huh, to get them over there. But when you come up, you're going to bring your hands up above the knees, and you're going to really push into your hands and feel your background almost as if you feel like you're going to do this kind of wacky somersault, but we're not going to try that. But my hands are above my knees, and I push into my legs, and I roll through my spine to stand up. Okay, bring your hands to your hips and turn to your left. So you're going to take a wide step out. So wide stance, you'll see part of me. I know, not all of me. I could brush my hair right now. You wouldn't know. Okay. Take a wide stance and feel where the path of reach is from your seat to your heel, right? Notice, do you feel even that circulation from your seat to your heel? Likely having this wide stance is kind of really pushes your edge on that. So feel where your knees are in a micro bend, and then tilt at the hinge of your hips and let your rear reach back a little bit, not too much, just enough that you feel the leg connection. And then you can slide your hands down to the ankles and move your toes to turn in. You can also get your block. So this is one reason why I have this option, is that the blocks might be nice to have forward under your hands. Okay, so there's two arm options: hands forward on the height, and then lower your head down between the arms. Now that's pretty satisfying, but it's intense. You can always bring your hands closer in, bend your elbows more. And those that want to go for a full inversion, you could have your blanket right between, right dab in the middle. Put your hands on the sides of the blanket on the floor in line with your toes. And then reach the crown of your head to the blanket, right? So that's your next version. Now, some of us might have aversion to that version entirely. Not because we don't like inversions, but this kind of one can be a little bit boggling to your blood pressure. So if you know this isn't good, doesn't feel right, it's wrong right now, then you have your hands on your blocks in front. So make a choice. And then get a feel where your seat reaches back and it lifts a little bit up towards the sky. It's okay to have the legs straight. You want to have a toned circulation through the thighs and experience the heels pressing down. Breathe slow, whichever version you're in. Okay, let it be about kind of searching for circulation right now. Kind of play with that balance. Okay, give it a few more moments. Yet you might change with your hands on the blocks. You might make a little bit of a switch. Now find your awareness, move back to your blocks and using them to kind of help monitor your movements. You're going to bring the blocks in and to your mat and then turn your right foot forward, turn that foot completely towards the toes to the front or towards your bolster, and then turn towards that right foot with the blocks on the sides of it. And then we're going to keep that back heel active. So turn the left foot behind you so the heel is reaching down and the ribs are stretching forwards. Keep the arms in that pattern of experiencing extension out of your back. Yeah, I like this version of the legs in that straight reach like we did in the beginning. We're going full circle here. So I want this one is the back of the pelvis can stretch wide. Okay, so get a feel for that. Lift the left heel. Yep, inhale. Ribs expand, exhale. Feel that left foot stretch back. If the bones on the bottom of the foot don't really feel like they're kind of moving fluidly, you might have to turn your left foot a little bit out or step it a little bit out. Okay. Simple. We're going to bend the right knee, and I want you to feel a little bit of a lunge. So you're going to reach the left leg back, not lower the knee on the blanket, but reach the left leg back so your right knee is above the ankle. You kind of strike a lunge position. Okay, and then you're going to push off the ball of the left foot like you're pointing your toe. Again, it's toes. Okay, so push off to bring the left foot besides the right. And then when you're in this forward motion, take the back into that comfortable shape. Let the spine go into a C shape. And once you're in that C shape, you're going to take the right leg back. Okay, so just switch it. Feel that right heel reach behind you. Try to let the heel press downwards. Remember, this is all about just practice and repetition, and it gets easier with that. And so if the hands are too low and you can't really find the ability to lengthen, then you put your blocks up a little higher until they're securely under your hands, but you might find a little bit better rhythm through the connective tissue. Okay. So feel that reach through the right leg behind you. Breathe. Okay, now let the back go into a little more of that C shape. And then bend the left knee and feel it move forward just above the left ankle. And then slide the right foot back and keep it kind of reaching till you feel a pretty stable lunge. Good. So we get a feel of that lunge is stable. Reach back through that right heel. Balance. You know, once we start to lower the back knee down, now if you don't have a blanket and exact eyesight for your knee, you might slide one back, or as you lower the knee down, make sure that you can keep the left leg supported. And then we'll take the blocks way open and walk the left foot over to the right side. And we'll shift the left knee open. We're not pigeoning. So we're gonna use this as a transition so we can get our leg to hook around to get our body to sit. And then we'll swing the right leg forwards. And we'll take the legs so they're in a wide stance, and we'll tip the bolster on up. So you might have to do a big bolster reach. And the legs are reaching in a wide span. So I think of this as wide leg pattern. Wide angle is what it's usually called. And you lean forward. Upavista leg. So lean forward so that the brain lowers down between the arms. You get a feeling of the movement of the ribs. Now let's trace the patterns of awareness to a final pose. So I want you to feel where the spine is lengthening right now. So it's reaching out of the back. So find somewhere between kind of that reach, that stern position in our back, and then let it loosen the threads, and then get a block set underneath your bolster and place the bolster so it's supported. And then we'll let the bolster bench be our base, and we'll put a blanket on top, and then let our legs be in a fairly wide stance. If you're going to use your sand across them, that doesn't work usually. So it's going to be those of you that have sand on your shins will have to pass on that instruction entirely. But if you're lowering down your arms, your spine, and your torso, you might feel your knees kind of swing a little bit open, just enough that your hips can balance, your spine can be centered, and your hands could rest anywhere it's comfortable. If you happen to have an extra sandbag, you might put that, or just your sandbag you're using and you didn't put on your shins, you might put it right here across your ribs and use that for grounding and focus. And let the back release and your arms unwind, and return to a concentrated, slow breath. Soak in simply the breathing, but most essentially the practice, absorbing. Maybe letting your mind surrender from the details of what could have worked or what was the best shape set for your body, but just experiencing. And your quality of breathing. Inhale, fill the lungs. Exhale, letting go. Receiving your breath. And relaxing on the out breath. Now let your attention wander down to the feeling of your feet. Circle the feet. You might just twinkle your toes, but get a feeling of your feet without being stepped on, just letting them move and mobilize. And then maybe you feel awareness up into your knees, so that let the knees find their ability to recover here. And if you have sand on your ribs, you'll easily slide that away. If it's on your shins, you might wait a few seconds. And then we'll bring the hands to the core body, so the rib connectors, they connect us all the time on both sides. And then start to slide your feet. If you need to move your sand on the shins, this is the time, and slide your feet to the edge of the bolster. And then just like we did in bridge pose, we let the weight slant towards our central spine when we bring the knee at a time in towards the chest. So you're just trying to learn how to balance in your body at all times. And rock the knees side to side, either by holding them or just letting them go at their own free range. And let them roll you, like your whole torso rolls with your knees, to come up to sitting. And let's unite for a few moments simply with our seat on a little height so the pelvis can have some balance with our knees. And if that height is not sufficient and your knees are still a little bit higher, you might grab the other blanket. It usually adds that balance for the knees. Sometimes you like that little bit of striving, I know too. But feel where the hands lift up and merge and balance their energy to both sides into the center palm. Not having to make the hands perfectly symmetrical to each other, but feeling a felt sense of collective in our practice today. And put some energy into that support for each other in our practice, combining inhale and with exhalation, bowing into your heart. In gratitude, namaste.